I am Ethan Carter, sheriff of Willow Creek, a small town where almost nothing extraordinary happens. Or at least, nothing did until recently. It all started with strange reports of a female figure dressed in red being seen in the local forest. Initially, I thought they were just stories to scare the children, or urban legends that come to life on dark, quiet nights. But when the calls started increasing, I realized there was something more serious going on. That morning, I received a call from Martha Jenkins, one of the oldest residents in town. "Sheriff Carter, you need to come here. I saw the lady in red in the forest again, near the creek. Something is very wrong," she said, her voice trembling. Though reluctant, I went to the location to investigate. When I arrived, Martha was pale, pointing into the forest. She was there, Ethan. It was like she was watching me. While investigating the area, I noticed strange marks on the ground, as if someone had dragged a long dress through the damp soil. This only piqued my curiosity further. I returned to the station with more questions than answers. Later that same day, Emily Hayes, an investigative journalist, arrived in town. She had heard the rumors about the lady in red and was looking for a big story. I knew her from articles she had previously written, always with a knack for uncovering the truth. When she walked into my office, I could see the determination in her eyes. "Ethan, I'm here to investigate this story. There's more to this, isn't there?" Emily said, without hesitation. "I'm not sure yet, Emily, but something strange is happening, and we need to find out what it is," I replied, feeling that she could be a valuable ally. Meanwhile, Jack Miller, a history student from the local university, was researching old documents in the town archive. He had always been fascinated by the history of Willow Creek and its mysteries. While examining old records, he found several mentions of the lady in red, all tied to tragic events in the town's past. That afternoon, by chance, our paths crossed at the local cafe, a small, cozy place frequented by everyone in town. I was drinking my coffee when Emily walked in, followed by Jack, who seemed excited about his discovery. "Sheriff Carter, Emily, you need to see this," Jack said, laying a stack of old papers on the table. "These documents mention the lady in red in connection with various tragedies over the years. It's not a coincidence." "This only makes things more interesting," Emily commented, flipping through the documents. "We need to join forces and investigate together." We agreed to meet that night to explore the forest where the sightings had been occurring. As the sun set, fog began to spread across the forest floor, creating an even more sinister atmosphere. With flashlights in hand, we pressed on, alert for any movement. And then, we saw her. The female figure dressed in red, standing between the trees, watching us. My heart raced. "There!" I shouted, pointing. Emily and Jack quickly turned and saw her too. Before we could get closer, the lady in red vanished into the fog, leaving us with an unsettling feeling. "This is real," Emily muttered, her eyes wide. "We need to find out who or what this lady in red is." That night, we returned to town with more questions than answers, but one certainty. Something dark and ancient was lurking in Willow Creek, and we wouldn't stop until we uncovered the truth. Interruption for a moment to ask for your help. Please like, follow us, and click the bell so you can receive our videos and help the channel grow. I was rummaging through the dusty attic of my parents' house when I stumbled upon an old, deteriorated box. Inside, I found an ancient diary, its leather cover worn by time. Curiosity overtook me, and I began to flip through the yellowed pages. The diary belonged to a woman named Margaret, who lived in Willow Creek over 100 years ago. Her entries were detailed and filled with emotion, and as I read, I felt increasingly connected to this woman from the past. "Emily, you won't believe what I found." I immediately called Emily Hayes, the investigative journalist who had recently arrived in town. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. "What is it, Jack?" Did you discover something important? She asked, eagerly. Yes, I found an old diary in my attic. It belonged to Margaret, the woman accused of witchcraft. Her notes are fascinating, and I think they might help us understand better what's going on. Emily agreed to meet me at the town library, where we could calmly analyze the diary. When I arrived, she was already there, surrounded by piles of books and notes. Her eyes lit up with excitement when she saw the diary. This is incredible, Jack. Let's see what we can discover. We spent hours reading Margaret's entries. She described her life in the town, the challenges she faced, and especially the injustice she endured. Emily, with her journalistic skills, began to piece together a clearer profile of the woman who would become the Lady in Red. Jack, we need to talk to the older residents of the town. They might have valuable information about Margaret and what really happened to her, Emily suggested, determined. The next day, Emily and I visited several elderly townspeople. The stories we heard were disturbing. Most people believed Margaret had been unjustly accused of witchcraft and lynched by an angry mob. An elderly woman named Agnes shared some shocking details. I remember the stories my grandmother used to tell. Margaret was lynched while wearing a red dress. They say she screamed until the very end, proclaiming her innocence, Agnes said, with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, Sheriff Ethan Carter was investigating the old police records. He called us to his office to share his findings. We found Ethan sitting at his desk, surrounded by yellowed documents. Ethan, did you find something? I asked, curious. Yes, I found records that confirm the story. Margaret was indeed lynched by the mob, accused of witchcraft without any solid evidence. What's even more disturbing is that she was wearing a red dress at the time of her death. Ethan responded with a grim expression. We decided to visit the local cemetery to find Margaret's grave. When we arrived, an uneasy feeling washed over me. The grave was overgrown with weeds, and the soil around it appeared disturbed, as if something or someone had escaped. This is strange, Jack. The ground looks disturbed, like someone recently dug it up, Emily observed, frowning. We need to be cautious. Something's not right here, Ethan added, looking around warily. That night, back at home, something even more disturbing happened. I was reviewing my notes when I received a frantic call from Emily. Jack, you need to come here, now. The lady in red. She appeared at my house. Emily's voice was trembling, filled with fear. I rushed to her house and found Emily pale and shaking. She told me that the lady in red had appeared and whispered something in an unknown language before disappearing. What did she say, Emily? Were you able to understand anything? I asked, trying to calm my friend. I don't know, Jack. It was a strange language, but it seemed filled with pain and anger, Emily replied, still visibly shaken. At that moment, I realized we were dealing with something much darker and more dangerous than we had imagined. Margaret, the lady in red, was trying to communicate with us, and her tormented soul was crying out for justice. The nights in Willow Creek had become a torment of nightmares for me. Every time I closed my eyes, there she was, the lady in red, guiding me through dark alleys and shadowy forests. The visions were so vivid that I would wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing. One of those nights, the dream took me to a specific place, a clearing in the forest, surrounded by ancient trees. I woke up certain that this place held special meaning. Jack, Emily, we need to talk, I announced the next morning as we gathered at the sheriff's office. Emily looked at me, raising an eyebrow, skeptical. What happened? You look exhausted, Ethan. I've been having nightmares about the lady in red. She's leading me to specific places in the town. I think she's trying to show us something, I explained, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Jack, who was flipping through Margaret's diary, looked up and said, "That makes sense." According to the diary, Margaret believed her spirit would be trapped until a specific ritual was performed. Maybe she's trying to guide us. Have you managed to translate anything that might help? I asked, hopeful. Jack nodded, pointing to a specific page in the diary. Yes, I found a ritual that could free her soul. But we need some specific items, and one of them is an ancient artifact we haven't located yet. Emily perked up. Wait, this might be a coincidence. I found a strange artifact in an antique shop yesterday. The owner said it was connected to an old local legend. Maybe it's what we're looking for. Haven't you liked the video yet? Aren't following us? And haven't clicked the bell yet? Please take a moment to do it now and help the channel grow so we can make more videos. She pulled a small ceramic figurine covered in strange symbols from her bag. Jack carefully took the figurine and examined it closely. This is incredible. The symbols here match those described in the diary. I think we've found what we need. With the artifact in hand and the diary's instructions, we decided that the clearing from my dreams would be the ideal place to perform the ritual. Night fell quickly, and we headed to the forest, armed with candles, the diary, and the artifact. Are you sure this is a good idea? Emily asked as we prepared the site. What if we're just provoking the lady in red further? We have no choice, I replied, lighting a candle. We need to try. Jack began reciting the words from the diary, and the air around us seemed to grow heavier, as if an invisible weight was pressing down on our shoulders. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and mist began to form around us. Look out, I shouted, as a red figure emerged from the mist. It was her, the lady in red, hovering a few feet from us. Her eyes glowed with an ethereal light, and an invisible force pushed us back. Jack was hit the hardest. He collapsed to the ground, unconscious, while Emily and I struggled to regain our footing. Jack? Emily ran to him, but she was repelled by an invisible barrier. With difficulty, I stood up and yelled at the apparition, "What do you want from us?" The lady in red didn't respond. Instead, she moved closer to Jack, who lay motionless on the ground. The light in her eyes pulsed, as if she were drawing energy from him. "We have to do something," Emily screamed, desperate. I remembered the artifact and the instructions in the diary. I grabbed the figurine and held it tightly, beginning to recite the words Jack had translated. The light in the lady in red's eyes began to flicker, and she stepped back a few paces. "It's working. Keep going," Emily urged. With renewed determination, I continued the ritual, and the lady in red's figure began to fade until she vanished completely. The air around us returned to normal, and Jack began to regain consciousness. "What happened?" he murmured, confused. "You were attacked by the lady in red, but we managed to drive her away," I explained, helping him up. Emily looked at us with a mix of relief and concern. That was just the beginning. We need to learn more about this ritual and how to truly free Margaret's soul. Otherwise, she's going to keep haunting us. I nodded, knowing she was right. The battle was far from over, but at least now we had a clue about what to do next. And most importantly, we had each other to face, whatever came. Darkness still loomed over Willow Creek, but we were determined to bring the light back to our small town. When Jack finally opened his eyes, he was disoriented. The last thing he remembered was the invisible force that had attacked him during the ritual. His head throbbed, and it felt as though he had just awakened from a deep, disturbing dream. I looked at Emily and Ethan, who were standing beside him with expressions of relief mixed with concern. "Jack, are you okay?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I think so," he murmured, still trying to process what had happened. "But I had visions, memories of a life that isn't mine. But that feels so familiar." Ethan frowned, clearly perplexed. What kind of memories? Jack rubbed his temples, trying to organize his thoughts. I saw myself as someone from the past, someone who loved Margaret. We were together, but we were brutally torn apart by the crowd. I felt her pain, the injustice, and then everything went dark. Emily and Ethan exchanged meaningful glances. There was something more at play than just a simple apparition. Emily then remembered the artifact she had found at the antique shop. She pulled it from her backpack and showed it to Jack. Look, I found this. I think it's connected to the Lady in Red and the ritual you mentioned in Margaret's diary. Jack took the artifact carefully, examining it closely. It was an ancient object, made of some kind of dark metal, with inscriptions he immediately recognized. This is the key to accessing a parallel dimension where Margaret's soul is trapped, he said, his voice filled with newfound understanding. We need to use this to free her. Ethan, who had been silent until then, cleared his throat. I had a dream. My grandfather appeared to me and said that our family is connected to the tragic events of the past. He showed me specific places in the town, as if he were guiding me. Emily furrowed her brow. So, you think your family had something to do with Margaret's death? Ethan nodded slowly. It seems that way. Maybe that's why I'm so involved in all of this. It feels like it's my destiny to help right this wrong. The trio pondered over these revelations. The truth was beginning to unfold, revealing layers of secrets long buried. We realized that the only way to resolve this was to use the artifact to enter the parallel dimension and free Margaret once and for all. But we have to be aware, Jack warned. The journey could be dangerous and without return. If we fail, we could be trapped there forever. Emily took a deep breath, determined. We don't have a choice. If we do nothing, the Lady in Red will continue haunting Willow Creek, and the injustice will never be corrected. Ethan nodded in agreement. Then let's do it. Let's free Margaret. With the artifact in hand, we prepared for what could be the most dangerous journey of our lives. We chose a spot in the forest where Ethan had seen the Lady in Red in his dreams. It was a place marked by ancient stones and twisted trees, a setting that seemed to have been pulled straight from a nightmare. Jack held the artifact firmly and began to recite the words he had translated from Margaret's diary. The inscriptions on the object started to glow with a supernatural light, and a cold wind swept through the area, causing the leaves and branches to sway violently. We felt a powerful energy enveloping us, as though we were being pulled into another world. Suddenly, everything went dark. When the light returned, we found ourselves in a distorted version of Willow Creek. The houses and streets looked the same, but there was a sense of desolation and malevolence in the air. The shadows moved in strange ways, and the vegetation seemed to have a life of its own. And then, there she was, the Lady in Red, watching us closely, her eyes glowing with a mix of sadness and anger. "Have you come to free my soul?" Her voice echoed, soft and melancholic. Jack stepped forward, his heart pounding uncontrollably. "Yes, Margaret. We want to right the injustice that was done to you." She smiled, but it wasn't a smile of relief. It was a smile filled with pain. "Then prepare yourselves, because the truth you seek is darker than you imagine." Emily, Ethan, and I exchanged one last glance before bracing ourselves for whatever awaited us in this distorted dimension. We knew our lives would never be the same again, but we were determined to fight for justice and peace for Margaret. I can't believe you're not following us yet. Please like the video, follow us, and click the bell. Help us grow the channel. The mist around us was so thick, we could barely see one another. Every step we took in the parallel dimension seemed to drag us deeper into an endless nightmare. The distorted version of Willow Creek was a hellish vision of our town, with crumbling buildings and shadows that moved on their own. The presence of the lady in red was palpable, almost suffocating. I, Ethan, felt a shiver run down my spine as I heard a familiar whisper. "You shouldn't be here," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere. It was the lady in red, or whatever she had become now. "We have to free her," I said, trying to keep my courage. Emily and Jack were beside me, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Suddenly we were confronted by dark versions of ourselves, figures that seemed made of shadows and hatred. My dark counterpart approached, its eyes glowing with a malevolence I had never seen before. "You don't deserve to live. You're weak," he said, his voice a distorted echo of mine. "You can't stop us," I responded, though my confidence was faltering. Beside us, Jack faced his own vision. He saw himself and Margaret, brutally torn apart by the angry mob, their hands reaching out to each other in a desperate gesture. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Margaret, forgive me," he whispered, his voice filled with pain. Emily stood frozen, her eyes locked on the lady in red. Suddenly it seemed like something clicked in her mind, as if a veil had been lifted. "She's not just Margaret," Emily said, her voice trembling. "She's an entity that feeds on injustice and suffering. Margaret is only her latest victim." I turned to Emily, feeling the weight of her words. "So, what do we do?" I don't know," she admitted, her eyes brimming with tears. The lady in red moved closer, her presence an overwhelming pressure on our chests. "You will never defeat me," she said, her voice cold and unyielding. That's when I made a decision. "I'll sacrifice myself," I declared. "If that's what it takes to free these souls, then so be it." Emily grabbed my arm. "Ethan, no, that can't be the only solution." "We don't have another choice," I said, trying to stay calm. "If this can save Margaret and all the others, I'll do it." As I prepared for the sacrifice, an unexpected twist occurred. Emily stepped forward, her eyes locked on the lady in red. "I'm part of this too," she said, her voice steady. "I've discovered that I'm a descendant of this entity. I have to choose between my lineage or saving you." My mind reeled with the revelation. Emily, a descendant of the very entity we were trying to defeat. It was hard to comprehend. "Emily, you don't have to do this," I said, though I knew her options were limited. "Yes, I do," she replied, her voice resolute. "If I don't, no one else can." She moved closer to the lady in red, some kind of invisible connection between them. "I choose to save my friends," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. The entity screamed, a sound that echoed through the parallel dimension. Bright lights and shadows swirled around us, and for a moment everything went silent. When our vision cleared, we were back in the real Willow Creek, not the distorted one. Margaret appeared before us, her figure now peaceful. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "You have freed me." And then she disappeared, leaving us in the quiet of the night. Emily stood beside me, her eyes filled with tears, but also relief. "We did it," Jack said, his voice full of emotion. I looked at Emily and Jack, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. We had freed Margaret, but the cost had been high. And now, the town of Willow Creek could finally rest in peace. But one question remained. What would come next for us? Was the legacy of the Lady in Red truly buried, or was it only beginning to unfold? Only time would tell. Leave a comment telling us what you liked and what you didn't like, so we can improve our stories. And also, leave a comment with a suggestion for a new story theme. And please like the video, follow us, and click the bell. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.